hold on. Two sisters in competition, and what they're in competition for is really their identity. Their identity is what is pitted in biblical times, because basically, what gave you value in biblical times?
Children.
Children and a husband also, or being married or being part of a clan, because we know like two tragic women, one in the Torah, one in the book of King, end of Samuel, is there's a number of women whose lives are jeopardized by not having husbands. So we have Dinah, which we're going to read about, Jacob's daughter, who ends up being raped and then disappearing. We also have Tamar. Do we remember Tamar, the one who
David's daughter.
yeah, there's Tamar, David's daughter, who was raped by her brother, her half brother, and then she disappears. Like, that's it, your life is over. But then there is the other Tamar in the Bible who took action because she was supposed to be married to Judah's first son, and he died. And then she was married to a second son, and he died. And then he had one son left, and he basically sent her home and said, I'll call you. Don't call me, I'll call you. And left her in this position of, well, she's not a virgin anymore. She's a woman she's a widow, but she's supposed to be marrying the son. She has no children, which gives her status. And so, do you remember what she does in order to,
Oh,
right, Cindy?
it's kind of complicated. She sets herself up as a prostitute at a place where she knew her father-in-law would walk by, seduces him, gets pregnant, and
Kept
then
his coat.
but and
She
like
kept
take
his
some
coat.
objects from him so she could later prove that she was the person, and then has a child with her father-in-law.
Right. Well, there's no blood relation there. I
Right.
wonder if he takes her as a wife. It doesn't really explain that. It's interesting. Or maybe he finally marries her to his third son. But he's a widower at that time, and he's going to a sheep shearing, and she poses as a Canaanite sacred prostitute, which they had a part of their cult was, if you sleep with a sacred prostitute, in their view, you're sort of communing with the god or the goddess. It's a way
Or
of
how did you become sacred as a
she
prostitute?
was posing as a sacred prostitute. A sacred prostitute usually is near a cult center, like a temple, a Canaanite temple or whatever. She dresses in a certain way. And the signal is, sleeping with her is like going to services. You know what I mean?
Communing
So,
with God.
and so Judah said, okay, I'm going to do this. Sounds good. And Judah is one of Jacob's sons, and the one we are descended from, by the way, Judah, because we're Jews. And he says, well, I don't have any money with me. I'll go to the sheep shearing and I'll send it back. And she says, well, you need to give me something for collateral. And so he gives her his staff and his seal. It's pretty, valuable to give your seal, which is basically how you sign documents, by your seal that shows that it's from you. And he went to the sheep shearing. He sent a band back with the money. He said, go back. And she wasn't there. She was gone. They said there was no woman there. And so now Judah didn't have his seal and his staff, and she was gone. And then several months later, some of the men come into Judah and say, your daughter-in-law is a whore. She's pregnant and she needs to be burned. They're very harsh about it. Hi, Abby. Nice to see you. Are you okay at the hospital? Wait, you're mute. You're mute. Well, I can't hear you. You're muted. Oh, All right. Well, when you're ready to talk, because I can't hear you. We can't hear you right now. Um, we're just talking about Tamar, and she comes in, and the rabbis honor her for saying, she doesn't say, well, you're the father. She hands in the seal and the staff and says, tell him that the man who owns this is responsible. And he realizes it's his own. And he says, she's more righteous than I am because she deserved to be married and I just abandoned her. And then she has twins. There's a twin theme, and we see like Esau and Jacob, and now this is before twins, and one of them, the older one, ends up being the ancestor of Boaz. Boaz was the one who married Ruth, and they were the great grandparents of King David. So it's an interesting bloodline on both
So
sides.
King David is a descendant of this woman posing as a prostitute.
Yes. And on the
Interesting.
other side, he's a descendant of Ruth. Through his father, through his grandfather, he's a descendant of Tamar. And through his grandmother, his grandmother was Ruth. And she also seduced Boaz. So if you remember, when I teach to King David, he's a very sexual guy, and he comes from sexual lineage. If you look at that, both women and both non-Jewish women, both, not one's a Canaanite and one's a Moabite. So it's interesting because the identity of being Jewish at that time came through the father, not the mother. So, okay, there's Helen.
Wait, I'm fascinated with the sacred prostitute. Would it be okay for a married man to have sex with the sacred prostitute?
Not a Jew. It's a religious thing among the pagans and there was actually sacred male prostitutes as well that you could have sex with in these Canaanite temples. And that's why the Judaism is so like, do not stray, do not go, do not follow them, because there was a lot of sexuality.
But Judah was a widower, so it was okay.
Yeah, I guess, it's like, well, yeah, women, Barry, a man is joining us. Okay, that's fine. Hi, Barry. This will be interesting. Well, I'll talk to him if he talks. Okay. So, all right. So basically, we're at the sisters, and I wanted to, okay, Hannah, I hope I'm going to be able to share this. Look at Hannah, well, just a second, share. Okay, here we go. I did it.
Yay!
I think I did it. How do I open this now? You are screen sharing. Okay, I know I'm screen sharing, but how do I?
It's very zoomed in.
But how do I make it bigger? Does this do it? No.
No, it's
Oh
too
my-
big on our end. It's way too big. Like all we see is Leia.
I know,
And-
but I have to open it. It's not, I need to expand
Oh.
this. So where do I, oh, here, is this it?
I don't see
Here
your-
we go. There
Oh,
you
perfect.
Okay, I finally figured it out. Okay, so I wanted to go through the sons of Leah and Rachel and look at what their names mean, because I think it's really interesting to start with that. And it's also about their really sad competition to have children. So we talked a little bit about this, but I want to go through the names. So Lori, why don't you start?
When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless.
It's interesting. It's like, if you're loved, are you being punished?
Yeah, it's an interesting sentence. When the Lord saw that
yeah.
Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She named him Reuben. Behold, a son, for she said,
That's what the name means.
yeah, for she said, it is because the Lord has seen my,
Oh, my misery. I lost that word.
okay, surely my husband will love me now.
Right. Okay. So Ru'u is like, see, then. Ben is a son. Ru'u, then. Look, I have a son. She
Oh,
said,
good. I've got it.
God saw me and my misery, and now my husband's going to love me. Okay. Continue.
She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too. So she named him Simeon, hearing and listening.
Okay, because the Lord heard that I am not loved. And
Okay.
Shimon, there you can hear the word Shema in the word Shimon. Shimon. So so now, but her names are what? What's her mentality about these names? kind of
Well,
self-pity.
she's making a point that she is still this tragic person who
Yeah,
is
so
not
there's like
loved.
self-pity and whatever, but God heard me. I mean, it's a little rubbing into the face of her sister, I would think. It's like, oh, look, I have a son because God saw, and also to her husband saying, God saw that you're neglecting me, and God sees that I am not loved, so I'm having children. So this is my comfort. So that's, I mean, I don't know, these women, well, you know what? They're very real. They're real. They're like, even though they're iconic and they're ancient stories, there's this human, behavior there. Okay, one more.
Again, she conceived, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me because I have borne him 3 sons." I mean, doesn't she get it? He's not going to be attached to her. So he was named Levi, attached to.
Which
Okay.
means attached to. Okay, so, but we did read in the Midrash last week, if you recall, because she had all these sons, Jacob had been thinking about divorcing her. And he said, I can't divorce her. Look at all the sons she's giving me. And, this is my legacy. And we also were reminded from last week that Jacob didn't like looking at her because she reminded him of his own deception of his brother Esau, and he even said, how could you fool me? And she said, look, I learned from the best. Look at what you did. You said you were Esau, so I said I was Rachel. So he has a lot of guilt, but he's not going to divorce her, but she's not happy in the marriage. Okay, so Cindy.
She conceived again, and when she gave birth to a son, she said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah, praise, also to give thanks. Then she stopped having children.
Okay, so we're all descended from Judah, Yehuda.
Do you mind if I go down to see if I'm having my blood drawn?
Didn't she also have
I don't
Dinah?
mind running. You should have done it a long time ago.
Okay,
Mute
Abby.
yourself,
Oh, yeah.
please.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yes.
She stopped. She had Dinah too, right?
Well, she starts having more again, but for the
Oh,
moment
okay.
she stops. And the word todah, thank you, in Hebrew comes from the same root as Yehuda. You can hear it, the oda, uda. So our name has the word praise and gratitude. Our name as a people. So these were the three. So she finally stopped kvetching, basically. And she said, okay, thank you, God. It's amazing. I have 4 sons. Imagine 4 sons. And her sister, 0. So then what does she do? Continue, Cindy.
When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?"
What an unsympathetic guy. And she's also reminding him in a subtle way. He's failing on a lot of counts. Remember Isaac when Rebecca didn't have children? Do we remember what happened with Isaac? Does anybody remember? He prayed to God for his wife. It says Isaac prayed to God on behalf of Rebecca because she had no children. And this was his father. And Jacob's like, well, don't blame me. It's not my fault. Plus, I have 4 sons. I have children. You don't, but I do. And that's very unloving. And Jacob's character is very mixed. And that's why he probably needed to wrestle with the angel later on, because we talk about that being a wrestling with his own dark side, that he needs to, he's very unsympathetic to his wife. Okay, so what did she do, Cindy?
Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go to her so that she may give birth on my behalf." So that's like Hagar.
And Sarah.
Yeah. That even I may have children through her. So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her.
One more.
And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and has also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore, she called him Dan, judge or judgment.
Right, Dan. Beit Din. When we say a Beit Din, that's a court. It's from the same word. So she says, God judged me positively and heard my voice and gave me a son. But it's not her son, is it? It's
No.
it's a surrogate through her servant. And there's a midrash that Bilhah, and then there's another one we're going to see, because then then Leah says, well, then I'm giving my servant. But their Bilhah and Silpah were their half sisters of Rachel and Leah. That, their father conceived them with another maidservant and had these sisters. Reminds me of American slavery. It's terrible. And then gives them as maids to his daughters. So they're half sisters to these girls, and their father gave them to them as their maidservants, which I guess was common or accepted. But when we look at it now, and also there's another midrash that says Bilhah was very beautiful. She was young, maybe in her teens, and very beautiful. And that comes up later in a way. So she said, okay, well, and then it's interesting that Jacob says fine. You know what I mean? There's never any resistance from the men when the wives say, take my servant and have sex with her, for me or whatever. Yes, Cindy.
But there's such a difference here. All the boys were treated equally, other than him loving Joseph the most. And with Abraham, that Ishmael was discarded once Isaac was born, and Isaac got all the birthright.
Yes. However, it looks like, well, in the Torah, God says, listen to Abraham, listen to your wife and send Hagar away. But it's interesting that when Abraham dies, if we remember, Ishmael and Isaac buried him together and stood
Right.
side by side. So there wasn't any animosity between the brothers, it seems like. And then Esau marries a daughter of Ishmael, Mahalat. Remember that his parents are very upset that he's married to Canaanite girls. And so he goes and marries his cousin, Mahalat, who's the daughter of Ishmael. So it seems like you're, and also there's another midrash, because they're always trying to defend everybody, that after Sarah died, Abraham went back to Hagar and had more children with her. Even though they call her by a different name, the rabbis say it was Hagar. So they're trying to reconcile, the rabbis are trying to create peace between Ishmael and Isaac, between these two families, even though the text may tell us something different. They really want peace, which I think is something, it's a shame that we don't, emphasize this with our Muslim cousins. That from the very beginning, there was this attempt for peace and standing side by side in the world, which is what we should focus on instead of our differences, because really the cultures are pretty similar in a lot of ways. Okay, one more, Cindy.
Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings, I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she called him Naphtali. Naphtali, contest or contest for divine favor.
Right.
Wow.
So the reason that it's interesting to learn all these names is that these became the 12 tribes. And when they went into the land, each of these names was the name of a region of people descended from these original sons. So there was a tribe, Naphtali. There was a tribe of Dan. Actually, King Saul came from Dan. So it gives us more of a sense of how the regions got their names, and everybody was descended from this original son of Jacob, and Jacob's name got changed to Israel, and that's why they were literally the children of Israel. We think of it as the Israelites, but originally they were Bnei Yisrael, the sons of Israel. Israel is Jacob's other name. So, okay, so that's interesting. Okay, so Lori, did you read? You read, right?
Yeah, I did read. Mhm.
Okay, so it's very hard to see everybody. Jan, how about you? When Leah saw,
that she had cease-bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife.
okay, so now she said, well, if you're going to give your sister, you're going to give your servant to Jacob, I'm going to give my servant to Jacob, my half sister. Well, it was both their half sisters, and that was her servant. Go ahead.
Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she called his name God, good fortune.
Which means God. Okay, so that's another, and like Gadi is a popular name in Israel, God or Gadi. Okay, one more.
Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher, happiness.
And Asher is a really popular name
Okay.
today
Mhm.
with Jewish boys. My nephew was Asher. I know another kid was Asher. So this is where it comes from. You say, where do these names come from? And what does it mean? Osher. And we have a prayer, Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, which means happy are those who sit in your home. It's a very, very, we don't do it in the Reform movement, but every conservative shul says that Ashrei, which means happy are they. Yes, Pnina.
Okay, it's supposed to mean exactly what the word means with an ayin, but since it's more emotional than actually owning the money, it's the same word, but they wanted to show that the spirituality of the word, to be rich in the belief in one God, to be happy with your own self or whatever it is that you have. So the osher with an aleph is actually to be happy, to be satisfied with not necessarily material things.
Right.
But the same word with an ayin tells you that you are rich in a material thing.
Right. And the word
But
is
it both
Ashir.
actually means being rich in something.
Oh, interesting. Ashir, it would be
And the other one is osher also. It means that you're rich with not with money, but with other kind of things. Like you're rich with children, that you have a lot of children. You're rich with good children. You're rich with the land gives you its crops.
Mhm.
I understand.
so
Okay, so
that kind of stuff.
Nina, why don't you read in
Where are we?
right here?
Okay, in the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah.
Okay, I want to stop because
The
I have this
mandrake.
wonderful new commentary of the Torah. It's a modern and rabbinic commentary, and it says they're calling it love flowers, love flowers. And then it says the technical name for love flowers is mandrakes. Okay. At one time, the mandrake were thought to have aphrodisiac powers. In other words, to make you feel sexual, desire it. The root of the mandrake was formerly used to promote fertility as a cathartic or a narcotic. In Hebrew, the mandrakes are called dudaim, which comes from dodi, from love. So it's like a love plant. Reuben, okay, so there's no scientific evidence, but these dudaim were considered, like a four-leaf clover is supposed to give you good luck, and there's other things that different flowers have different meaning. So Reuben, who is Reuven, the oldest son of Leah, remember, he went during the wheat harvest and found these dudaim, these love plants, and brought them to his mother Leah. Okay, continue. What happened to you?
Where are we?
Nina, then Rachel said.
Oh, then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "It is a small matter that
Is it a small matter?
Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes."
Okay, this is so
brother.
interesting.
Weird.
Okay, so these two sisters. So first of all, Leah is saying, you took away my husband. Is that even true?
No.
No. he loved Rachel from the beginning, and he married, Leah not by choice, but she's still very bitter, and you want to take away the mandrakes. And Rachel says, okay, well, then he can sleep with you tonight if you give me some mandrakes, because I think Rachel's thinking fertility. Rachel's thinking fertility. Leah's thinking aphrodisiac. They each have different needs for this plant. So,
Can I add something that we
yes.
constantly, when we talk about the two sisters, when he married Leah, Leah already had eyes like she was crying all the time.
Yeah, we
So the
know.
woman was a complainer, and she was always complaining and crying, because that's why they explain why her eyes were like
Right.
somebody who cries all the time.
Right.
So we have to understand now that there is here a little fault in Leah's character, that she was always a complainer and always a crier, and that's why he gave her first, because he was afraid, her father, he was afraid that because of those eyes that were always crying, she is not going to get married ever, and that's what he tricked Jacob into
Well, there are
marrying her.
many, that is one. There are many, many interpretations. We read some of them, but Karen, did you want to say something? And
Okay.
why don't you show yourself?
Yes, yes. Give me one moment.
Whoops, because she raised her hand. Now she's,
Okay.
now you're
I just thought-
muted. Karen, you're muted. I don't know what happened. Karen? All right, well,
In other words, if she wouldn't have cried for this, she would cry for something else. She
no,
was,
well,
she was,
but
she was never
cried.
happy.
Yeah, but they say she cried because she
complainer.
was betrothed to Esau and she didn't want to. Karen, as soon as you unmute, I will call on you. But right now you're muted, so we can't hear you. Okay, so now Rachel said, fine, you can sleep with him tonight. I'll sleep with him tomorrow night or whatever. But we get the impression that Jacob didn't run into Leah's tent on a regular basis. So, so she was saying, giving her a thing. So Susan Ehrlich, do you want to read when
Sure.
Jacob,
Sure.
here, when Jacob,
Jacob came from the field in the evening. Leah went out to meet him.
oh, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. I don't know why I did that. Okay. Here, go ahead.
All right. Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes."
Can you believe that?
Wow.
Real sexy, right?
Yeah, you have to come with me because, I
I
traded
paid
for
for it.
you. Yeah.
But
And
she hired her own husband to sleep with her?
Yeah.
well, I bartered you. I bartered for you. You're always with Rachel,
Rachel.
or maybe you're with Bilhah and Zilpah, but you have to come and be with me because I traded for mandrakes. And, I don't know, it seems like a lot of our men, if so far, every single biblical man is kind of a pawn to his wife. I don't know. There's some the women are very, very powerful, these matriarchs. They kind of make demands, and the men, the only man who kind of rules the roost, as far as I can see, is Lavan, which I don't like, but he sort of says, you're doing this, you're doing that, in that patriarchal way. But the other men are pretty, malleable or amenable. I mean, for sure, Rebecca ran circles around Isaac, as we know. And Sarah got her way for the main thing, which was getting rid of Ishmael. And now these two women are kind of determining their sexuality to some degree. But he says, okay. Or does he not care? That's the other thing.
David asserted himself. So
Wait, hold on.
he wasn't a patriarch, so.
Okay, so she said, so I hired you, so continue.
So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. And Leah said, God.
Wait, hold on. Sorry, I was trying to. Go ahead. God has given me wages,
God
my
has given
wages.
me my wages, because I gave my servant to my husband. So she called his name Issachar. meaning
Issachar, which comes from Yesh Sachar. Sachar is a reward or a price or a payment or whatever. But she says, God has given me my wages because I gave my servant, which was Zilpah. So Issachar was another one of the tribes. So you see, she so far had 5 sons. She's, very, very fertile and very, very blessed, yet, he still doesn't love her. Oh, okay, and let's go, Susan.
A business transaction there.
Yeah, and Leah conceived.
And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a 6th son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. So she called him Zebulun, honor or to grant or raise up.
To raise up, to elevate. So, and read the last one.
Afterward, she bore a daughter and called her name Dinah, meaning justice. We've got a Dan and a Dinah then, right?
Right. So there's a Dinah, but there's no like I call her Dinah because of this, or there's no explanation or whatever. It's just as an afterword. It's an afterword. If you think of it in a book, it's an afterword or an afterthought. And she had a daughter. And she had a daughter. It's like not as important. That's why The Red Tent is such an amazing novel. If you haven't read it, it's so fantastic. It's about Dinah. And it's also about the sisters and their relationship. And the Red Tent was the place that they went to when they had their menstruation and where they were separate, and they basically lived a feminine life and they worshiped feminine idols in the Red Tent, but the men didn't know about it. It's a wonderful novel. So that was Leah. She had 6 sons and 1 daughter. So 6 of the tribes, actually Simeon did not get a tribe. Shimon never got a tribe because of something he did that was so terrible that he didn't get a tribe. But the other brothers got a tribe. Each had a tribe. And the Levites, who were the Levites? What came from the Levites? Do you remember? What's the power of the Levites?
Oh, the priesthood.
The priestlies.
The priests and the Levites, they did not get any land either because, so there were 2 spaces that were not filled by the 12 sons. Shimon did not get one, and Levi didn't get one because they lived at the temple or at the sanctuaries, and there were towns established for them all over the country where they would live and then tend to the sanctuary in that area. And everybody had to pay them, support them. Like they got money from the community, they were supported, and also every sacrifice, they got a piece of the food or whatever the sacrifice was. So the community, I can say this, the community supported their clergy and for their home and their town and everything else. A great model, actually. So, and so the other 2 spaces, which we will learn later, ended up going to Joseph's 2 sons, not Joseph himself, but he had 2 sons, and they were Ephraim and Manasseh, and they became the last 2, the 12th, the 11th and 12th tribe. And when you do a blessing on Shabbat, and you bless your sons, you bless your daughter, and you say, may you be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. But when you bless your sons, you say, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. And those are Joseph's sons. And why not any of the others? Because according to the Midrash, those were the first 2 brothers who did not fight, did not argue all the way down. They had no enmity between them. So that's who you want. Yes, Pnina.
Okay. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I want to tell you that that wasn't something that was like a reward. On the contrary, the area where Bet HaMikdash was built, they have no water. And when in 1948, that was a big point of war, that they blocked the supply of water to Jerusalem. They had to bring them in cars, in trucks that have a way of bringing barrels of water. So being given that peace was actually something that they suffered. They had no natural water reaches this point.
Well, I'm not sure because I know in biblical times, there were cisterns and underground water that went that were blocked
It
up.
didn't just go, they brought it, they were channels. They brought it all the way by channels and filled them up so it will reach Jerusalem. That's why the whole map today, if you're looking at archaeology of what's left today, you literally see all those tunnels that were supposed to bring the water into the area. And it was a very sensitive point in 1948. The first thing that was done.
Okay, but we're not talking about that now. We're not going to
No,
talk.
what I'm trying to say is that they blocked the supply of water there.
Right.
So
But
that
they
wasn't
didn't just
an
live
area
there. They
that
lived
was
in,
not an area that was given to them as a reward on the contrary. It
okay,
was
but
something that was difficult.
Penina, they were lived in the land for like 500 years before the Beit HaMikdash was, and they lived in 36 cities all over the country. They didn't just live in Jerusalem because they were sanctuaries. So, but okay, but thank you, but I want to move on. So now we go finally to who hasn't read? Jan, have you read? Oh yeah, but everybody, Karen, do you want to read? No,
Sure. Where do you want me to read?
right here, yeah. Let me just move this a little smaller. Hold on. God, make it smaller. Oh no, sorry. Well, how did I do that? Wait, oh no. Share. I want to share. I didn't mean to pause the share. How do I do this? Oh no. Wait a minute. Okay. Are you there?
Starting from 19 or
19.
22. 22.
22? Okay. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she called his name Joseph, saying, May the Lord add to me another son.
And Joseph means Yosef, which means to add something or an extra or addition. So I find it interesting, and if I can find the participants, where are you? Okay. All right, I'll come back. I don't know what I did. But anyway, I find it interesting that she finally gets a son, and what's her first response? I want another one. Give me another one. It's not enough. Give me another
That's
one.
fair.
Because why? Who's she comparing herself to?
Oh, her sister.
She's
But-
comparing herself to her sister, and it's like this rivalry in the ancient world. We have a number of, okay, let's just analyze this for a minute. Why is it in every generation there is a rivalry between except Rebecca. Rebecca was just on her own. She did her own thing. But Hagar also lorded it against Sarah when she had a child. And now Leah and Rachel are doing this. And we'll find the story of Samuel is also his mother Hannah and her sister wife also was always, lording over her, I have children, I have children. Why do you think our matriarchs are portrayed like this? What do you think? Yes, Merle.
Wasn't it important that they have that who has more children than the other, and males were more important to have children than women?
Yes, yes. But why in these ancient stories about our ancestors did they pit these women against each other? What was the point? Is there a point? Susan.
I'm just thinking the jealousy between the women as to who can have more kids.
Okay, Susan, what were you going to say?
Well, that brings in Rabbi Gershom outlawing polygamy. There was a reason later on, and the reason that we blessed Menashe and Ephraim because they were the first brothers that weren't rivals. And they're showing here how destructive this polygamy can be.
That's interesting that it's a destructive idea to have multiple wives. We also have, by the way, a lot of brothers that fight and they fight about power and possessions. You know what I mean? And the birthright and whatever. And so it seems like and so there in sibling relationships, there's this inherent problem or this conflict or this competition that starts from Cain and Abel and comes all the way forward. And maybe it's trying to show us also that competition and rivalry ends up with destruction of the family, of the relationship, of the person, of the children also, because and favoritism also becomes another destructive behavior in this family dynamic. So yes, Penina?
I
It has to
think
be
it's
relevant.
okay, I'm trying.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I think it's also the amount of belief in God. Every time you see, and she prayed to God, and she prayed to God, this one prayed to God. I think it's the way their spirituality was developed. And I think that they are showing you who was more closer to that belief of the one God that's supposed to be the one who gave them all these children or crops or wherever it is, or water, like Abraham, the first thing he did was dug the wells. So I think the relationship to what is and who is the real God also is coming to in play here. Because
Okay, so I want to stop you for a minute.
There were one or two of them that brought with them their statues and their gods.
Yeah, we're going to read that right now. But
right. So I think it's, in my opinion, it's the way that the women brought up their children to believe in that one God that was a new concept at the time for everybody.
Okay, so that's interesting. But what we're saying then is that Leah was more spiritual because she had more children, even though we just called her a kvetch and a competitor and whatever.
Right.
So, I mean, and that because Judah was, we were descended from Judah, but the true gift or talented person was actually Joseph, who saved them all. And he was Rachel's only child. And when you think about Samuel, he was Hannah's only child. And maybe I think it's a little more complex than if you're closer to God, that's what you're saying, that the story's saying. If you're closer to God, you're going to get more children.
You're going to get more of everything.
Or maybe when it's only one, it's more rare and precious, on the other hand. Susan.
So I was going to say the Bible is loaded, or the Torah is loaded with examples of what not to do. I mean, Jacob being the perfect one himself, of deceit and the like. And then what happens then could be a payment for his own deceit. He becomes deceived. So, I mean, I think that this is showing the, and I didn't make this up, but others that polygamy has its problems.
Yeah, and also there is the stereotype about what's important to women, what's important to men. They both fight, they both compete, the siblings both compete. And it's interesting, and yet I'm gonna analyze, how do brothers relate to their sisters? Because we have two cases of sisters being raped. And in each case, one in the Tanakh, one in the book of the prophets with King David's daughter, and now Dinah, who we're going to see. And in each case, the brother's response was to murder the rapist. So is that a reflection on their shame or their sister's shame or protecting their sister or whatever? So we're going to get to that as well. But there's also the dynamic between brothers and sisters. Do we have any instances of good brother and sister relationship? I'm trying to think. I guess, yeah. Moses and Aaron and Miriam.
Yeah.
Have a great trio there of siblings where the brothers get along and they get along with their sister. I mean, they have little differences. I mean, like when Aaron built the golden calf, Moses wasn't too happy, but he didn't, disown him or hurt him or whatever.
Right.
He just reprimanded him. So there is a model for a sibling family relationship, came from slaves, and maybe just appreciated each other more, or appreciated the family in those times. So I think that's interesting. The whole book of Genesis is about family clashes and conflicts. And in the book of Exodus, the family that we follow for the rest of the Torah is a pretty good relationship, very good family. So I guess the rabbis are saying we evolve, and also maybe getting the Torah itself, or maybe the Sinai experience and the crossing of the Red Sea, got their priorities straight. You know what I mean? But they seem to never argue. So we're talking about family dynamics. I think that's pretty interesting.
Susan, can I ask you one quick question? And if it's off topic,
Sure.
shut me down. We're talking about Rachel and Leah and all of the bad things, in quotes, that they were doing.
I don't think of bad. It was like out of pain. They were competing with each other. They weren't hurting each other. They were just competing.
Well, what I was wondering is why in our prayers do we say, may we be like, or in honor of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah?
That is a good question. I mean, I guess because despite their human frailties and flaws, they tried to reflect Jewish values in the things that they did. You know what I mean? I mean, Sarah was a hospitable person. She was taught all of the people in her neighborhood. She was basically pretty kind, and she only really turned on Hagar after Hagar turned on her and started taunting her and hurting her and whatever. Rebecca was, what I love about Rebecca is she was a strong, proud, independent-minded woman who thought for herself, even as a girl. And God did communicate with her. She prayed, said, why am I suffering? And then when she heard that mandate, I like this about her. She broke the rules in order to do what she thought was right. I think she's an interesting character. And I actually, when we were involved with Faithful Central Bible Church, which unfortunately has not continued, but there was a woman there who taught Bible and the women of the Bible from the Christian point of view, and they saw Rebecca as a rebellious, sinful woman.
Ooh.
And I thought that was interesting. And I said, we don't think that at all about her. We love her.
Yeah.
And so
Why
that was
she rebellious and sinful?
Because she lied and she deceived her husband and she stole the birthright. I mean, you look at it on that level and you see her, doing the wrong thing, but we see it differently. So I thought that was really interesting. And then Rachel and Leah, I think they are, under the thumb of these different men, and they're in this rivalry, and their pain is so human, and I think we want to have compassion for them. And I think in the end they do reconcile. I think, eventually they do, but this society puts them against each other as opposed to them, because, they were very close before the marriage. And, according to the Midrash, Rachel was totally fine that Leah was marrying first because she wanted her sister to have a husband and whatever. And it seems like it was only when this baby thing came in that started to rip them apart. And we really don't learn much more about them, but I bet there's a lot more to them. But I think it's a really good question. And we're trying, and the rabbis say Leah was a very kindly, good woman, and that's why they blessed her with so many children. And Rachel has become the mother of childbirth. I mean, we talked about people going and praying to her because she understood how hard it is and how painful it is not to have children. And people still go to her tomb in Israel and say prayers to her to have children. And Orthodox women go there all the time, or they used to. You can't anymore. It's in Hebron. It's on the West Bank. But I actually remember I went there years ago. Panina.
I think you are right when you came to the part of looking at the children. Joseph actually saved his whole nation because
That's right.
it was a habit of every time that there was a famine in Israel, they were very close with the Egyptian, period. And then when he got to be second to the king almost, he saved his own people because he said, don't forget my bones when you
That's
leave.
right. He wanted to go home.
So this image of him always wanting to go back to his place of birth was there all the time. So I think it makes a difference. So wherever it is that's happening, all those stories, we always have to look like a fish. When you're fishing, you have to see where the hook falls, what is it that you're catching from this whole thing. And then you realize that there was a reason why they become a specific personality that actually warranted all this attention and all those stories, because something happened there that affected the whole nation.
Okay, thank you. I want to hear from Karen. Karen, you have
Okay.
your hand up, but you have to unmute. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to
Hi.
show myself too. Hi.
Hi.
There's so many comments, but I'm just going to stick to two. One, as to Rabbi Gershon, actually, that was only to last for 1,000 years, and it only applied to Ashkenazi Jews. So in Israel, during the founding of the state of Israel, Sephardic Jews would go, and they were polygamous.
They were.
And it expired around 2015, and the conservative and reform movements immediately reinstated it, but it was only for Ashkenazi Jews. And then the second thing is as to the interpretation of Leah's eyes. One interpretation that I like from the red tent is that they were actually different colors. So when she would look at people, people felt uncomfortable and they would look away. So that's why they said that she had weak eyes. And another one is that she cried a lot because she was told that she was going to marry Esau, and she didn't want to do that.
That's
The
right.
complaining one, I hadn't heard of that one.
Well, she's complaining now about her not having children and saying you stole my husband and this and that. But no, they say that she didn't want to marry Esau. But okay, but I want to.
Why do we have a monument for Rachel? We have today a monument.
It's not a monument. It was her tomb. It's what
right, her tomb. So today it's like some place that it's supposed to be really, really special.
Yeah, but I think the
he
cave
didn't
of the
do one for
Machpelah.
Leah.
No, but Leah was buried with her husband in the cave of Machpelah.
Okay, but still.
Okay, no, but I mean, there's a lot of kavod or honor given to Leah as well as Rachel. But what I wanted to talk about was this with Joseph is this theme in the Torah of dreamers. And, Jacob had this amazing dream, and then he had this other experience. And then Joseph, so there's this mystical quality of Joseph that he inherited from his father, even though his father didn't necessarily become as mystical or as generous as Joseph. So, okay, so it's time to stop, and we'll to be continued with the next time. It's when actually Jacob says it's time to go home, and they leave, and Rachel steals the household gods and takes them with her. And the rabbis, I love this, in order to justify it from a religious point of view, say, well, she took them so that her father wouldn't worship them anymore. She was trying to save her father from idolatry, whereas we probably really believe that she couldn't live without them and she needed to take them with her because the women were much less attached to the masculine patriarchal deity, it took them a lot longer than the men. And so they, I think, felt, yes, there's the big God, but I need my little fertility. I need my little goddess with me too, just in case, and there, Susan, did you want to say something?
Yes, it doesn't have to be an either or.
No, it was both.
Yes, that's what I like about Judaism too. It could be either or and.
I mean, there were, they found like hundreds or thousands of little mini goddesses. The Asherah was the name of the goddess in archaeologists have found them. So they definitely were worshiping them or kept them as good luck, just in case. You never know. I would love to have a fertility goddess statue. It would be so fun to have a little goddess and just say, okay, you stand for my feminine powers. And even though I don't literally believe in it, I can see how it would be very appealing, especially in a very strong patriarchal world, to have a god or a goddess who belonged to you and who understood your concerns. Because you sort of feel like Adonai has such big concerns that would he really care as much, even though the Torah says he does. So anyway, Shabbat Shalom. It was nice to
Shabbat
see
shalom.
you. I'll
Toda
see you
rabba.
next
Thank
Shalom.
you.
It's always a
Thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're such a.
Always a wonderful discussion.
Yes, I agree. Nice to see you, Merle.
Good to see you too.
Wonderful as always. Thank you.
And Lori and the others. So.